Mr. Sarai. I call the meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 85 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs. And today it's supposed to be our last meeting on the study of transition to civilian life. Yeah, we have for civilian life, but I know that we're going to have more votes. But first of all, I'd like to, because it's 5:15 on my watch, I'd like to know if I have unanimous consent to go till 7:15. Yeah, until jusqu'à quand?
Les activités ce soir.
Well, there are activities tonight in another room. All right, well, in that event, before we go to the witnesses, given the time, what I propose is we're supposed to have another panel after, so I propose that we do the first panel.
After the opening remarks, we're going to have 6 minutes each to ask questions, and after that, we're going to go to the second panel and till 6:30. Is that?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
If I can, before we go to witnesses, I'd move that we resume debate on my motion regarding the mission in Afghanistan. And when I say that, I mean it so that hopefully we can just go right to a vote on that motion, deal with it, and then go to the witnesses.
Please, let me finish the introduction, and I'll give you the mic right away.
Well,
because
I just moved it.
Yeah, but like I said, yeah, there is procedure, as you know. I have to go to vote right away. But let me open the meeting, and you're going to do it again, right? Okay, thank you. So, la réunion d'aujourd'hui se déroule sous forme hybride.
Today's meeting is being held in hybrid format in accordance with the standing orders. And again, when it is your turn to talk, avoid approaching or putting your earpiece too close to the microphone because it causes interference and it can injure our interpreters' ears. So please be careful when you're talking. And very quickly, I want to say hello to MP Vince Badoe, who is replacing Sean Casey for today.
Our clerk, or assistant clerk, I say assistant clerk, Madame Geneviève Desjardins, this is our last day today. So I'd like to say thank you to Mrs. Desjardins for being with us, but Mr. Malachi Azema still gonna stay with us at the committee. So now, before I introduce the witnesses, Mr. Richards, please go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and I want to make this quick. I move that we resume debate on my motion regarding the National Monument to the Mission in Afghanistan. And I want to be clear, my hope is that we don't have to have any debate at all. We can move right to a vote and deal with it and go straight to our witnesses.
Okay, great. So, requests, yes. But let me make sure, I think that I have to go right away to vote because c'est une option dilatoire, c'est ça? Motion dilatoire. So I'm sorry, Ms. Blenay, I have to go to vote right away because of this. So, first of all, do I have unanimous consent so would like to go to a vote? Yeah? Okay. Please, could you please take the vote, please? The clerk will take the vote.
Just to be clear, we'll now vote on the motion?
Yes, exactly. No. We are now voting to go to resume debate.
I had understood you had unanimous consent to resume debate and you were going to move right to the motion.
No. I don't have unanimous consent, so let's have the vote on resume debate, please.
Mr. Badoe?
No.
Mr. May,
No.
Mr. Miao,
No.
Mr. Sarai,
No.
Ms. Hefner,
No.
Mr. Dodo, Mr. Richards,
Yes.
Mr. Tolmy,
Yes.
Ms. Wagenthorpe,
In favor?
Monsieur Desilets,
En faveur?
Ms. Blaney,
In favor.
Yeas 6, oui pour 6, nays 5, contre 5.
Alors, merci. Donc, il faut...
Thank you. So now we have to resume debate on Mr. Blaney's, no, sorry, rather Mr. Richards' motion.
On the last meeting, Ms. Blaney just tabled a motion. She didn't put that motion, it was in notice. So, after reviewing the tape, excuse me, let me finish, please, let me finish. Après avoir regardé, visionné la caméra,
After having looked at the camera, the so it's Mr. Richards' motion is not receivable because Ms. Blaney simply tabled her motion and there was no debate. It was simply a notice of motion.
Now, I understand that we just vote to resume debate, but we can have debate on something that we don't have on the table because I'm going to give you the mic.
We're resuming debate on my motion.
Yes. But let me say something. Ms. Blaney come with a notice of motion. You have, vous avez un appel au règlement là-dessus.
You had a call to order, but there can't be a call to order because it wasn't tabled.
You understand? Okay, so now you have the mic. Yes, listen to you.
I would move that we call the question, or not move, but I ask that we call the question because I have nothing more to say, and I'm not on a
Can't
point.
do that
I'm
on
not
a
on a
point
point
of
of
chair.
order. I'm recognized by the chair. Thank you.
He,
No, I'm not on a. My hand was first.
Okay. But
I'm asking we call the
and
question.
Mr. Sarai, right after. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Richards, you have the floor.
Don't understand what they're so scared of in these documents, but I'm asking that we call the question because I want to have our witnesses have a chance to speak, and we've debated this many times. And I'd like us to move to a vote on the motion, please.
Mr. Chair, you cannot do that in a point of order. I'm sorry. No, you cannot.
Would hope you guys will not choose to waste time so we can go to a vote. That's all.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Right after, I know that I have Mr. Sarai and Mr. May, and after consultation, they told me that, first of all, we have an amendment from Mr. Desilets, so we have to go back to his amendment instead of discussing your debate, because that was on the table. So if we resume debate, we have to go back on the motion of Mr. Desilets.
Point of order,
First
Mr.
of all,
Chair.
no,
Point
Mr.
of
Sarai.
No, point of order, Mr. Chair.
Okay, point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've had this happen before, where we've come back to debate, and I was next on the list, and you said that no, it's a whole new list, and it was whoever's had their hands up on that day, and I believe my colleague had his hand up, I had my hand up, and you went to Mr. Richards on a point of order, and I think if you consult the clerk, he cannot move a dilatory motion on a point of order. So my suggestion is that we go to my colleague who did have his hand up first. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I understand that, Mr. May, but we're not discussing any point of order now. The point of order was accepted. We have a vote on that, but to resume debate. And to resume debate, we have to go back to the motion of Mr. Desilets. But I understand that you said you had your name on the list last time we were discussing that, so I'm going to verify if we have this such list so we can use it. Okay? Excuse me. So, debate was, excuse me, because the debate on that motion or that amendment was adjourned, so we have to start a new list. So that's why I ask, c'est pour ça que je demande à M.
That's
Desilets.
why I'm asking Mr. Desilets, does he have, as we've just voted, do you want to resume debate on your amendment? And if so, I would like Mr. Desilets to read the amendment for the committee members. Mr. Chair, it was quite it's been quite complicated with this amendment and this motion. So if I summarize, the motion that was tabled by the Conservatives, the one that we'll be dealing with in a few seconds, is the one dated December 20th, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, but for the time being, you have an amendment that you tabled on February 12th. Well, it's not a motion, it's an amendment. Yes, okay, sorry, amendment. I just wanted to rectify the facts because I also had a motion that I'd tabled earlier, but I want to facilitate the debate. And that's why we're going with the amendment, an amendment that was tabled on February 12th. And I'll read it out. So the motion that was, as I just mentioned, was that was tabled by the Conservatives be amended by added the following after paragraph B, C, and that the Department of Veterans Affairs Canada and the Department of Canadian Heritage provide the official report of the jury established for the selection of the firm responsible for the design of the National Monument to Canada's mission in Afghanistan. So that is the amendment that I am making to the motion that was tabled by the Conservatives. All right, thank you, Mr. Desilets. If there are MPs who would like to say something, please raise your hand, but I just want to say something.
Function, so please excuse, we have to deal with that, and we're going to come back to you. Sorry. So, not only Mr. Burry, but we have also by video conference, I'd like to apologize to him too. We have Mark Menkel, Corporal retired by video conference, and that's it. Yes, okay, sorry. So, any intervention on that amendment? Okay, Mr. Sarai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I again also want to apologize to Mr. Burry and Mr. Menkel who have taken out their time to do this, and unfortunately this this motion keeps coming back and being interrupting witnesses who are testifying whether about their violence perpetrated to them, harassment perpetrated to them, etc., or those like yourself who are trying to tell us on transition and how that transition should be possible. While I understand some members have concerns and want to get more information on this decision on the monument to Afghanistan, I think most people want the monument to be done, and I think we've had exhaustive discussions on this. We've brought in the ministers in plural, multiple times into this. We've gotten record requests. We've heard, and from the press even heard from people on the jury who have come out and said they actually support the decision, and the veterans on that jury have come out and said that they support this this decision. I think to go back and ask for an amendment to include the jury decision would be something that I think they have to check with their lawyers. I don't know the legalities, the disclosure requirements, what NDAs were signed. I think those would have to be checked. I think our Privy Council would have to, or others would have to vet those to see those. And I don't think it would come out with anything more than what was done. I think when a jury makes a decision, it's a principle of a jury to have the jury deliberations internally be confidential. I come from a legal background. That's a paramount. This is a paramount principle. That one allows the jury to keep the discussions and deliberations in private.
Sorry, guys. It's only Randip Sarai, MP Randip Sarai, who has the floor. Please, Mr. Sarai.
So I'll say that again. I think the deliberations of a jury are always confidential, however type of jury that is. For us to go back and ask them what the jury has done, how they deliberated, what they looked at, what they didn't look at, what the opinions of those were. They may have candid comments. They may have had frustrations. But they were under the understanding when they're doing this that their deliberations, their decisions are confidential and should be kept that same way. So I think the whole point of doing this amendment or the actual motion itself is a rather moot point when it's been exhaustively studied. If you look at, I believe just on May 15th, June 2nd, 2020, the decision originally was to have this Afghanistan monument tucked away under a bridge. The previous government was not doing anything with it. It's something that was, for that reason, buried for much too long. We've been working on to have a veterans monument to commemorate those that have fought for this country, fought for others, and to have it commemorated in the correct way. After a jury's opinion, which even was not unanimous, in fact, the veteran on that had decided, was actually very relieved at the decision afterwards. It's come out. A very thorough and robust survey was conducted with over 10,000, majority of which were veterans families, and those associated with them. They took very strong opinions on it. They looked at both, and we wanted to honor those that are a monument that best reflects those veterans. I think that decision overwhelmingly, as the input came in, was very strong, very meaningful. And if you actually look at even now, any critique might come from those, obviously, the proponents that might not have been successful at this, but you don't hear the veteran community coming out. We had a veteran just here the other day. His frustration was why it's taking so long, but he did not his comment was not that the original or the one design over the other design. So veterans overwhelmingly have been very supportive of this. I think as a Veterans Affairs Committee, as members of it, as parliamentarians, I think we have a duty to ensure that our commemorations which is a big part of Veterans Affairs. In fact, I think it's one of the pillars of Veterans Affairs is commemoration. And when we use that budget and we use those funding, we commemorate the best way possible, and that best way possible is the way that veterans themselves who have served, those women and men, find it suitable. So I think this designed by an Indigenous designer who put a lot of passion into it, the Simpson group, thought of something, and as far as I've seen, as in my short stint as Parliamentary Secretary to Veterans, and as well as having a Veteran Center and a Legion and a very robust veterans community, it's been overwhelmingly positive, and they want us to move forward. I think as we keep doing this longer and longer, what's happening is we're frustrating the system, and I think people want to see shovels in the ground and a monument commemorating them in the best way possible to be erected. So I urge that we stop debating this, stop dealing with this over and over again just because of its, I would say perhaps partisan positions, and actually get to the actual point, which is to commemorate the veterans and get on with it. And we've had more than ample times. I've been on various committees, citizenship and immigration, foreign affairs, audit, And I've never had a minister come this many times, or multiple ministers, to speak so candidly about the process and all the comments. So I think we should continue in a way that commemorates them rather than bring this back, lose a lot of time amongst witnesses, lose a lot of time amongst those that are preciously here, giving their time and energy to help us study this matter. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sarai. And now I'm going to go to Ms. Blenny. You have the floor.
Well, thank you. I was personally very excited to hear Mr. Richards say that he just wanted to get to the vote, and I'm unusually in a position where now I'm having to listen to other people. So I'm going to move that, and I hope it's a proper motion, that we vote on the amendment.
Yes, okay, I understand, but we still have people on the list, so I have to complete that. And I have Mrs. Hefner. Yeah, you next.
I just want to add that I'm new to this committee, but I think I've been frankly stunned at the extent that we've been debating this. And from the perspective really of the artists, it's where seems like the concern is coming from, rather than the veterans. And if you look at the two pieces of art, I think if you talk directly to the veterans, you can see why they felt the one design. Sorry, Chair, the members across are yelling at me while I'm
Just
trying to
one
speak.
person
It's
has
a
the
little
floor.
distracting.
Please, Ms. Hefner.
Thank
Please.
you. As an outsider who, without the experience of the members across, you look at the renderings from the two artists, and you can see why veterans tend to prefer one over the other. One is more abstract; it's very artistic. It's beautiful, also. The other one actually shows soldiers. It's tangible. You can tell what it's commemorating. And I don't know why, and I don't know if the committee has already discussed this or not, but I don't know why we can't build two monuments. Afghanistan was a huge mission for Canada. Why not build both monuments on either side of the country? I don't know if that's something that this committee has discussed or contemplated, but I don't think it would cost that much, or it would be beyond the pale to go ahead and do both artist renderings. And the stories from both artists are great. They're both good ways to commemorate that mission in Afghanistan. But I don't know why we're more concerned about what the artists think than the veterans. And from what I understand, more than 12,000 Canadian veterans have responded to have their say about this monument, and our government's listening to them, unlike the previous government, that made them angry because they didn't consult with them at all. And so I'm frankly kind of stunned that we're still talking about this. This is such a big issue. I think I want to hear from the witnesses. I want to hear more about transition to civilian life. And I don't understand why we're having these debates on and on. It makes sense to me that we choose the monument that the veterans feel most represents their time in Afghanistan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. On the speakers list, I have Mr. Brian May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If we can go back to when we were first discussing looking at this, and we agreed to have a one meeting on this. That was what we were supposed to do, and then it turned into two. And then we wanted the minister, and I used a term back then, mission creep. And that's exactly what is happening. And I think, look, we recognize why we're doing this the way that we're doing it. We have offered to have committee business time. We've offered to even have a subcommittee to deal with this. We recognize that every other motion that I was the chair of this committee, we always would do committee business in the proper way. This has become a political stunt. It has become a political stunt by the opposition. It's a fishing exercise. No, there's no other way to describe this. And I'm sorry that once again the opposition has decided to do this when we have witnesses on important studies. I said this when this came up last or at the beginning, that we were in the middle of a incredibly important study on women veterans, and that's what veterans want us to focus on. They're watching this and they're like shaking their head. They're shaking their head. They want us to be studying the important aspects of what their challenges are, what their barriers are, and so we agreed to bringing the minister in. We agreed to bring in Dayu and hear the story, and we've done all of this. Right? What are we doing? What is this? This just seems to be one more. Every time we expand this, it becomes something else. Every time that we agree, it's like, well, okay, now we wanted to do this. This is wasting the time of this committee. It is now wasting the time of veterans in this study. We had this. We are seeing such disrespect for veterans that we had to collectively do sensitivity training because of this.
Excuse me, Mr. May. We have another
You think
vote.
that's funny, guys? That you guys,
Excuse me.
because of your actions, you had to do sensitivity
Guys,
training?
excuse me.
Come on.
Excuse me, please listen. Sorry, guys, please, members of the committee. Now we have a vote. And because we have that vote, I have to ask members of the committee, do I have unanimous consent to continue? No. So we don't have unanimous consent. So Mr. Burry and let me see your name, Mr. Paul Burry here and Mr. Mark Menke, I'm so sorry. I have to suspend the meeting until the vote is over. So the meeting is suspended.
The meeting is resumed. So, committee members, since it is 6:31, and at the beginning you'll remember that I'd asked for unanimous consent to go beyond 6:30, but we'd suspended the meeting. So we will be resuming our meeting. And this time I'm going to ask the committee members, does it please the committee to adjourn this meeting? All right, we'll go through a vote here to see whether we can continue or not.
Consent to continue the meeting.
Chair, I ask we continue. I think it's really important that we get to the bottom of this cover-up.
I said, and I consult the table before, and they said, if the vote say no, we're not going to adjourn, we have to continue.
Mr. Chair, the convention has always been, every other time we've been in this situation, you've asked for unanimous consent.
Right.
I just don't understand what they're so scared of continuing for. What are they hiding?
Yeah, just a second. Well, okay. Yes, Mr. May, I agree, because every time at the end of the meeting, I always ask for your consentment of members of the committee. But today, not only because it's today, but we need a majority to adjourn the meeting. So if some members say no, so we have to take the vote.
A point of order, Mr. Chair, just asking what's different between today and every other committee meeting?
Well, because the other time I always have unanimous consent to adjourn.
Oh, we've actually haven't given.
No, I don't remember saying no to adjourn. That's the first time I asked unanimous consent to adjourn, and some people say no. So if it was no to that, I would ask the clerk to take the vote, to make sure which one say no, which one say yes, and that's the reality. So right now, I ask the clerk to take the vote to say if we're going to adjourn the meeting or not. Please.
Mr. Badaway?
I really have to give this some thought. No.
So, yeah.
Let me rephrase that. Yes.
Point of order.
No, your first answer was your first instinct. Stick with your first instinct, man. Stick with your first instinct.
Ms.
Yes
Hefner?
or no to adjourn?
Ms. Hefner?
With all due respect, you've asked several times to extend. We are at the end of this meeting. You need unanimous consent to extend the meeting. Do you not? I just think we're following the wrong procedure here. You're asking to consent to adjourn, but the meeting time is over, correct? So you need unanimous consent to extend the meeting beyond that time, do you not? We're in the middle of a vote that we shouldn't be having.
But you cannot do a point of order.
And Mr. May, I'm going to come back to you, but first of all, we have a vote and to say if are we going to adjourn or no. So I have to ask members, and if we come back, it's a new thing. Yeah.
You're looking at pause for half an hour. Think about it.
Mr. May?
I move to adjourn.
Mr. Miao?
Monsieur le Président, je m'excuse, point d'ordre, je sais pas.
Mr. Speaker, call a point of order. Not during the vote, no, sorry.
Mr. Miao?
Yes, to adjourn.
Mr. Sarai?
Yes to adjourn.
Mr. Dodo?
No.
Mr. Richards?
No.
Mr. Tommy?
No.
Ms. Wagenton?
No to adjourn.
Monsieur Desilets,
Non.
Miss Blaney,
Oh, sorry, no.
yes pour 5, 5, nays contre 6.
Donc, la séance continue.
Right,
Et
so we will continue the meeting. Now, before we go further, I'm going to ask the committee, is there unanimous consent to go until 7:30? And if I don't have unanimous consent, well, it's the same thing. We will have to go to a vote to be able to continue. I have the unanimous consent to continue to 7 or 7:30? No, I made arrangements to stay. I have to leave at 5 too. I'm sorry. All right. I don't know if the committee members want to accommodate Mr. Desilets. Should we go to 6:55? Yes.
Adjourn? That'd be easy. Yeah, that'd be easy. Yeah, we'll just vote. Call the vote. That's the spirit of
To what?
We'll call the vote.
Il y aura un remplaçant, Monsieur le Président.
There will be a replacement for me, Mr. Chair.
Donc, okay, so now we are back. So we're gonna go till 6:55, and
On est en train de trouver quelqu'un. Il y aura quelqu'un me remplacer.
We're looking for someone, so somebody will replace me.
our 2 full hours of meeting, so gonna go until 7:30, unless, and yeah, yeah. Now, no, I have to suspend. I can't go to a vote right now because when I suspend the meeting, Mr. May has the floor. We are discussing the amendment of Mr. Desilets. So I'm coming back to you, Mr. May. You have the floor.
I'm confused. We didn't have a vote. You asked for unanimous consent. You do not have it. You do not have unanimous consent to continue this meeting.
No,
Yeah,
listen. I checked.
I will continue
Yeah.
to speak if that's what we're doing here, Mr. Chair. But this has not been the way this committee has been operating. In every other circumstances where we have been asked to no, not necessarily. Everybody that you've asked for unanimous consent. So I will continue. Obviously, if I have the floor, I will continue to speak.
I'll let you continue. Then, like I said, I just consulted the table and they said, unanimous consent to continue is not a formal thing. So if we see that people are willing to continue to discuss, so that's why I give you the floor to continue with to discuss it. Yeah, excuse me.
If Mr. May doesn't want to continue the meeting, he could just stop talking and we could have a vote and we could deal with it.
It's not a point of order, sorry. Mr. May.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will go back to what I was speaking before the votes began, and remind this committee that when this issue came to us for the first time, I sat here, I said that, we have a number of motions in front of this committee. We're we were in the middle of the women's study at the time, which I think should have taken precedent, but we stopped. We paused that study in order to address Mr. Desilets' original motion, which I believe was for one meeting. Am I correct? That was one meeting, and then it became, well, we want to bring in Dayu, and we want to bring in the minister. And I addressed this committee back then that this felt like mission creep, that we were going to continue to dig and dig and dig and dig, and this now has become a deep sea fishing exercise, as far as I can tell. This is not the proper way to debate these motions. We have amendments to this motion that we have not had an opportunity to get to because we're not dealing with this in committee business the way that it should be. We have committed to hosting a subcommittee meeting to be able to deal with this and be able to move forward properly. That's been rejected. This has been something that clearly the opposition want to do in open committee, so that they can make a spectacle of it. And we had a number of cases where times where witnesses have been interrupted, to the point, Mr. Chair, that we had to, as was advised to us, take even more time to do sensitivity training when we have witnesses that have lived experience in front of us. And that was, I think, a very valuable experience. And I thank MP Blaney for suggesting that we go through that. But this happened last meeting. The witness even spoke to the disrespect that she was shown. And it's happened again today with witnesses here, which we did not get a chance to hear from. There is a process for these motions. All the other motions we've done have been done through that process. I would ask that the pushback that they're seeing from us is as a result of that process being broken, and the spectacle that this is attempting to create. With regard to the motion that is, the amendment that's in front of us, again, I'm not fundamentally against the amendment from Monsieur Desilets at all. I just think this is the wrong time and place to be doing these sorts of things. And I think that we absolutely need to reset this committee, get back to a subcommittee scenario where we're dealing with these motions appropriately. We have, how many motions do we, Mr. Speaker, can I ask quickly, because I don't have it readily in front of me, Mr. Chair, but how many motions do we actually already have on the docket right now? 7, 8? We are spending time on something that we've already spent a significant amount of time studying, and yet we have these other motions prepared, including one from myself, that I would very much like to get to, Mr. Chair. I would very much like to get to. I don't see us getting to these things if, in fact, we continue to interrupt witnesses with this kind of behavior from the opposition. And I think that we have to address, well, the opposition saying, well, just vote. Well, that's breaching my privilege to bring an amendment forward. That's breaching my privilege to discuss this appropriately. And there are amendments that I think would be reasonable amendments that the opposition may want to hear, but they don't want to hear them, Mr. Chair. They don't. This is a deep sea fishing exercise that they want to create a spectacle, and they want to create they want to politicize this. they think, oh, there must be something to hide because, you know, we're not supporting this. Well, that's nonsense. We have seen the minister already come to this committee to discuss this. We well, I'm glad, because you might have to, but I'm just I'm glad I'm amusing. I'm glad that I'm amusing.
Sorry. Please, Mr. May, you have the floor.
The opposition, Mr. Chair. I think that they're going to continue to heckle over what I think is a pertinent point regarding the process in which we deal with these types of motions. And they're going to laugh and they're going to make light of this, but this is the reality that we're facing right now, is that the rules, the process, it's being swept away because they want to make this into a political spectacle. They want to bog down the different departments with the production of documents. They want to bog down this committee with when we have motions in front of us, like the one, like I said, that I put forward, and I'll remind this committee that it is, and I would challenge this committee to argue that this is not something that we should be addressing. And so I'll read it again into the record, because maybe it's been so long that they've forgotten, but that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study on the experience of Indigenous veterans and Black veterans with regard to A, physical health, mental health, and safety concerns. B, supports for their transition to civilian life. C, sexual trauma during service. D, housing and homelessness. E, Veterans Affairs Canada programs and supports for them. And F, difficulties encountering during calls to participate in a foreign mission. That the committee invite the Minister of Veterans Affairs and department officials, that the committee hold no fewer than 6 meetings to hear from witnesses, that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee requests that the government table a comprehensive response to this report. That's one of I think 7 or 8 very good motions that we have in front of us that I think, if you were to actually poll veterans what they think we should be looking at, this would rank significantly higher. And I could go through all of the motions that we have, both from our side to, Monsieur Desilets' motions, to MP Blaney's motions, even a number that have been put forward by Mr. Richards, and I'll just read this one that I would think that this committee should be seized with. I think that this committee should be seized with real fundamental work. And instead of grandstanding, instead of the politicking that has been happening in the last number of months. And I think that we have to recognize that when people are watching, when veterans are here, we need to respect their time. We need to respect their efforts to come here and inform this committee, instead of using this time to grandstand and to go on these fishing expeditions. I think that Mr. Chair, it's important for us to look at all of this and ask ourselves, how are we being perceived across the country? How is this committee being perceived across this country? And are we actually producing recommendations for the government to move on? And I'm given to believe that the opposition believe that this fishing expedition is more important than all of those other motions. right? And we got, Mr. Tomey here pretending he's fishing and thinks that this is funny. I don't think this is funny. I don't think this is funny. I think that we have to recognize that we are here to do a very serious job. And I think that, we look at the behavior from the opposition. It's been called out by our witnesses. It's being called out by veterans online as disrespectful, and other words that I will not use in this place. And that should embarrass the members opposite. But instead, they're pantomiming and trying to make fun of this intervention that I'm doing right now. And I will wrap up, Mr. Chair, because I know there's others that want to speak to this. I think, Monsieur Desilets' amendment is a reasonable one. But I have amendments that I think are reasonable as well, that I think Monsieur Desilets would hopefully consider. And so it's not as simple as just saying, like Mr. Richards was saying, well, let's just vote on it. Let's just get this out of the way and vote on it. And I think that shows such a lack of respect for this process. It shows a lack of respect for our parliamentary rights and privileges. And it shows, Mr. Chair, that this is exactly what I said it is. It is a political stunt, and it is a fishing expedition. And I think that, I think that, we have to recognize that this process is being subverted right now. And instead of dealing with this in the proper fashion, instead of dealing with this in camera session, which is what we have suggested we would agree to, they want to bring this out into the light and the public and make hay with it, instead of actually doing the work that represents and supports veterans. And so I'll close there, Mr. Chair. I keep referring to you, Mr. Speaker. I apologize for that. But Mr. Chair, but I do have motions that I would like to bring forward, and I'm speaking to Monsieur Desilets' motion. But I did have my hand up previously, so I hope that list is still solid. That once we get through this motion, this amendment, that we come back to that original list and recognize myself as having an amendment to speak to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. May. And on my list, I have Ms. Blenny, Mr. Miao, Mr. Desilets, Mr. Sarai, and Ms. ACVA. So, Ms. Blenny, floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Chair. I do just want to put out there, first of all, that I do have to leave by 7:30. I do have another commitment that I also am committed to, so I just want the committee to know that. I can't get a sub, but thank you so much for offering that to me, Blake. I am a whip. I know how that works. So, I'm happy to support this amendment. I was excited to hear Mr. Richards say that we were just going to get on with it, because I was getting frustrated by how political this has become. In December, when I moved to adjourn, we had time the last sitting week on the Thursday. I would have been happy to sit. I don't get vacation. I'm sure most of us don't. I was trying to spend time with my constituents. I had obligations to them. And I really believe that constituency time matters, because our constituents matter. So I'm hoping that we can just get to a vote, at least on the amendment that we have, because I keep hearing from the Liberals that they have amendments that they would like to propose. If they have amendments that have a good rationale, I'm happy to consider them. I'm happy to have that discussion. I would like a clear rationale to them, as Mr. Desilets has given as well. But it feels like this is just getting held up. I've been very clear from the beginning. I've said it publicly that I would support Mr. Richards' motion. I know I've interrupted him a few times to try to get him to move the motion. So I just want to say, he moved it. I appreciated that he didn't have a big speech in front of it, and it's unfortunate that we can't even vote on an amendment that everybody has said that they're comfortable with. It would be at good to at least take one step so that we can get one step closer. And I want this done. I think I've been very clear with this committee that I just want this done. And the reality is, you know, I don't know the right answer for this. I really do believe that veterans should be making the final decision. But how that decision is made matters. How that process is made matters. And we have not had clarity. And I really feel sad because this is now blemished. And you know what? That service in Afghanistan should not be blemished with this. So I'm just trying to get to a place where we can figure out what happened, because I'm sorry, what we were hearing from the minister was not enough for me. I was clear during that meeting that it was not clear enough for me. The process was not clear, and there was no way to prove it was veterans. And maybe it was. But again, it creates this whole cloudiness that I don't think is fair. So I encourage this committee, please, can we just get at least to the amendment and then hear what the Liberals have to offer? And maybe in the next few minutes, we can actually get this done.
Thank you so much. And on the list, I have Mr. Wilson Miao. It's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm glad I won't be flying back to my riding of Richmond Center tonight, so I have plenty of time to really get into this. With regards to the amendment, I think before we speak to that, we are going to support that, of course, but I understand today is also a very important day. I'd like to convey my gratitude to thank our veterans, because those who especially served in the Persian Gulf War region in the 1990s to 1991. And on this day, on 1991, the Gulf War ended, and more than 4,000 Canadians served in the Persian Gulf region for over a year. And even in the aftermath of this conflict, Canadians are also continue to serve in peacekeeping role around this world and embargo enforcement role there. And I sincerely regret that I couldn't make it. I understand most of the members here today were at the memorial laying down the wreath for our Gulf veterans to commemorate this occasion, which is also the 33rd anniversary of the ceasefire of the Persian Gulf War. And I'd like to encourage all members of the committee, especially those across us, to prioritize my motion, which has been passed and tabled a couple weeks ago. And it's agreed to study right after the transition to civilian life study that we're doing. And it's unfortunate that we couldn't hear from the witnesses that had been arranged to speak to us today because of this. And I also really want to encourage we get on with the studies that we have on the list, especially surprising that I think today we received over 14 motions from the Conservative members. And as a newly elected member myself, not too much experience compared to most of those seated around this table here today. I just don't understand why we have to put out so many motions that really is taking up the important work that we're doing. And I was very glad that we actually finished our women veteran study, because that is a very important study that I feel in the history of Canada that has not been done. And really appreciate Rachel Blaney putting this motion forward. And we're also looking forward to the report, especially thank you for analysts putting together the report. Going back to the National Monument to Canada's mission in Afghanistan, I recall last year in June, I think all of us, except for those who are new to this committee, had attended the opening ceremony in the War Museum. And really, this monument recognized the commitment and sacrifice of the Canadian, not just men, but women who serve in Afghanistan, and as well as supporting those who provide safety to Canadians here at home. And I find it quite strange that, we're still discussing on the artists instead of the veterans who is going to be honored with the monument. And I think there's a reason why we're only hearing the opposition member talking about the artist community. Because the reason is most veterans are actually content with the choice for the monument, and they weren't happy with the location choice of the previous government, and rightly so, because veterans weren't even consulted for a monument in their honor in the first place. And from my understanding, that location was not as ideal as the location that's being picked here right now. And, I believe that our government is here to listen to veterans and to support them. And as previous study on this, minister have appeared and said many times that Veterans Affairs Canada heard from more than 12,000 Canadians about the monument design. And the majority of those who responded were veterans and their families and those who have served on the mission. And Team Stimson design best reflect their inputs. And when it comes to honoring the sacrifice of our veterans, I truly believe that we must listen to them. And that is why I feel it's very important for us to acknowledge that, this design has been set. And we should really respect the voice of our veterans and their families, because the monument that is being designed and built is for them. And
Careful.
are you okay?
That's enough out of you.
Yeah?
Meeting, there's a safety hazard.
Audrey. Yeah, are you?
Okay, sorry, Wilson, I apologize.
I'm just worried that you're a bit too tired. Okay. Just make sure you don't go across the window.
I think the Conservative Party started drinking.
Okay. Well, I understand, we are all here really serving our veterans, and that's why we're here discussing this. And it's important to really continue hearing from our veterans and their families who really want us to do the work we should be doing, especially supporting them with the transition to civilian life that we're currently studying, and at the same time supporting.
Just a point of
Excuse
order.
me, I have a point of order, Mr. Richard.
I noted the member was indicating he wanted to be able to get to other business, and I know many of us have been calling for a vote. I'm just curious, on the speakers list, are there any Conservatives or NDP or Bloc members on the speakers list present, or is it only Liberals?
No, we have different members on the list now. Yeah, exactly.
I know.
Yeah, well, but-
I know there's no Conservatives
Yeah.
on the list, so I just
Yeah.
point out that we could get to a vote if
It's-
people
yeah,
wanted
it's
us to
not
do
a-
that, and we could move on to other
The
things.
floor, so.
Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity again to speak, because from representing a riding of Richmond Center, which there are several veterans in my riding who have been living there and encountering difficulties, especially the world we live in right now. The things I'm hearing from them is how are we able to provide the support to them so that they can have the dignity to continue after putting out their service to Canada, sacrificing their time and effort, and all these to serve the country. And it's important for us to really acknowledge that and continue to give us a responsibility of our government to support the veterans that have served the country. And really, we should put our focus on talking about, the possible studies that can be useful for the government. And our role as parliamentarian, it is representing the people, not just from our riding, but Canadian across this country. And, I have the privilege to hear stories from some of the veterans and some of those who serve in Afghanistan. And what I'm hearing from them is, let's get this going, right? Like, since we have breaking ground, we did the opening ceremony, we acknowledged the design from Team Stimson. We should continue to do that. And I think, not to speak more about this, but, I think it's important for us to move on and, vote on that amendment, and then hopefully can consider some of the amendment that is being brought forward by our caucus. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miao. And on my list, j'ai Monsieur Désilet. C'est à vous.
Mr. Désilet. Thank you, Chair. Now, it would be logical to say that we're taking a lot of time that could be used to talk about other veterans issues. That's what the Liberals want us to do. But you're doing the complete opposite. Mr. Bay, I just wanted to correct something that you said earlier. So yes, we had 2 ministers come, but we didn't obtain the answers that we wanted. We also tried to get the 2 former ministers, and they declined our invitation. So, Mr. Sarai, the jury's decision was not unanimous. It's a majority decision. And they did have the majority, or the majority was there. Now, you referred to this famous survey. How many times are we going to have to say this? But the 10,000 people that were apparently questioned is worth nothing. Absolutely zero from a statistical or scientific point of view. Now, the Léger firm, the biggest survey firm, wrote to us a great report that you have. So you're defending what's not defendable under the pretense of wanting to defend veterans. So I disagree with you. Now, Mr. May, you said, that we should be respecting the rules, following the rules, but you're not following the process. But you know why we're fighting this? It's because there is a process that your government put in place, and they were competition rules that were very clear, and I was completely in agreement with them. But then somewhere, the government said they had to either accept the jury's decision or relaunch a competition. But then the government went and chose a third option, saying that we don't want this monument, we're going to go get another one. So, and you know this, my colleagues, or dear colleagues. Now, Ms. Hepsner, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Now, it's great that you're coming with a solution of 2 monuments. Canada is large enough to have space for 2 monuments. Exactly. And, that is a proposal that's, circulating among Liberals. But, well, go and sit down with the Minister of Finances and see if you can get funding for that second monument. And that veterans are telling us that, there were big words used, and I used them, the Conservatives used them. People were talking about a monument of shame, and I don't want to associate veterans with that. But you heard this last week from veterans, that this is a tainted process. They saw how things were done, but again, you're trying to defend what's not defendable. Now, Ms. Hepner, you have an excellent minister for Veterans Affairs who's very sensitive. And I don't think, this is my personal impression, but I don't think that she would have made that decision. But your government, you've done enough mistakes that I think you should be wanting to avoid doing yet another one. No, you're talking about your emotions. You have excellent. I'm looking forward to debating them. So, Mr. Chair, things are better. Are there other speakers after me? So I can't ask for a vote, even if everyone around the table is in favor of the amendment. So if I asked for the vote, and if there's unanimous consent to proceed, can we proceed? No, because I have other people on the list. All right, go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Desilets, for your comments. There are two more people on the list, Mr. Sarai and Ms. Epner, maybe. Mr. Sarai.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I'll agree to go put it to vote if we want to move on Mr. Desilets' amendment. We're in favor of voting on it.
Yeah, but I have to give the floor to Ms. Hefner if she wants to intervene in that discussion. Ms. Hefner.
Oui, je veux dire que moi aussi, je pense que
Yes, I want to say that I think this is a good amendment, and I will support it. I think that it's important to hear what the jury decided. But I also think that it's not the government that made the decision, it's the veterans. And no, I can't find my words in French, but that's all I wanted to say. And that's it for me. Thank you. All right, so if I understand, we've gone through the list. There are no other people wanting to speak. So I'm going to put the amendment to a vote. And so I'm asking committee members, do we have unanimous consent to pass the amendment of Mr. Desilets? Thank you. So the amendment passes. Mr. May. Rendip, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful we got past that and Mr. Desilets' amendment, though I did have some reservations that it was a jury decision, and sometimes I still believe, but in consent with my colleagues, I've agreed to it. I would like to propose an amendment to Mr. Richards' motion, and that it being in paragraph B, remove the following, quote, since November 18th, 2021, end quote, and replace it by since May 1st, 2014, end quote. And the reasoning we have for that is that we're doing a study on the national monument to Canada's mission in Afghanistan, and I believe that to fully understand all the elements, we need to go back in time. We have to go back to the process that was originally run to select the monument site back in 2014. The National Monument to Canada's mission in Afghanistan was announced actually in May 2014, and that's why I think it would be relevant to have the documents since that date. This would allow us to compare the consultations that were made with the veterans then, but also to understand the whole process in entirety, how it's unfolded, how we have gotten to this point. When I look back at, obviously I've had to look at this, it has been a very interesting journey. There seemed to be a rush for, there seemed to be a rush to have the memorial for those that fought against the communists be put up ahead of those that had sacrificed their lives for the Afghan mission. This was not prioritized at the time, so I think we needed to understand how that process was and how it got to where it is. So I would ask that we discuss that amendment, or we move on that amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sarai. But on the list, I have Mr. May, Mr. Richards. But before I go to Mr. May, could you please, because we don't have a copy of the amendment, could you please read it again slowly so the interpreters will have
no problem. I will read it again. So in paragraph B, remove the following, quotation mark, since November 18th, 2021, end quotation, and replace it by since May 1st, 2014. So we're replacing since November 8th, 2021, and replacing it with since May 1st, 2014. Very simple amendment.
Excellent. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Alors,
thank you. All right. Mr. Brian May, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I think this is an important amendment. I think that we do, if we're going to pursue this study, I think we do it right. and we start from the beginning of this process. I imagine that there is significantly more information if we're going to expand the date of this in terms of how we got to where we are. But I do think that's important to recognize and understand. I promised I would be brief, Mr. Chair. I know that there are even further amendments that we would like to bring forward, and I want to make sure we make time for those. And I believe Mr. Richards wants to speak specifically to this amendment. I will admit, when I put my hand up, I was hoping just simply to make sure you recognize me once this amendment is been determined. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now, Mr. Richards, the floor is yours.
So, although, certainly from my perspective, never any issue with more transparency and disclosure. But I do want to point out for the committee members, two things. First of all, the date November 8th, 2021 is actually quite significant to what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is trying to determine from the time the decision of the jury was initially communicated, which was November 8th, 2021. That's why that date's chosen. And that decision of the jury was communicated to the ministers, the two ministers involved, and from that date forward, there was interference by the Prime Minister's office. We've seen enough evidence. We know that has happened, and that's what we're trying to find out about is why was there interference to change the decision. The only documents that matter are the documents from the date the decision was first communicated forward, and the reason they're the only ones that matter are because what's at question here is why did the government try to change the decision of the jury? So any document before November 8th of 2021 is completely irrelevant to what we're trying to learn as a committee. And that's why that date was chosen. It's chosen for a very specific reason. And what I would not want to see, now we're talking about 7.5 more years worth of documents. We're asking for this to be provided to the committee. And obviously, when you go back 7.5 more years, you're going to have a significant delay for documents which will clearly produce nothing that will help us to determine what happened here after November 8th of 2021, which is what we're trying to determine. You can't determine anything about what happened after November 8th of 2021 when the decision was communicated by looking at stuff before it. So I would just say that I think what this will do, and I frankly will say I think the motive is deliberately to try to delay this, because clearly what we've seen over the course of a number of months now is an effort. Not only that, but over 2 years prior to the decision that to change this being announced by the Prime Minister, there has been all the efforts here by this government to try to hide whatever it is that caused them to change this. They've gone to fairly significant lengths here. And I will frankly just say, I think the motive behind this amendment is to further cover up and hide from that by delaying getting the documents that will actually get to the answers here. So I haven't heard a single reason why anything before November 8th will help us to get to the bottom of why did the Prime Minister's office interfere after November 8th when the decision was initially communicated to interfere. I don't see what this adds. I think it's deliberately designed to try to delay this committee from doing its work to get to the bottom of this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richards. And I have also on the list Ms. Bliney.
I just feel like that kid song when I was, my boys were little. This is the song that never ends. It just goes on and on. So here we are. So I'm hoping we can just vote on this amendment. I don't really care. I just want to get this done. Veterans deserve to know what happened. We need a better process. We need transparency. Can we just get this moved? So, if you want to change the date to May 1st, I'm sorry, I don't see how it's going to leave out November the 8th. I believe both sides of this seem to be trying to delay. Like, let's get it done. So I'm happy to support it if it means we actually get this vote done. If we don't get this vote done soon, I'm going to be very frustrated because we just need to get it done. Like, Obviously, we need to look into this. Obviously, there's something that hopefully we're going to find because it just seems like a lot of blocking at this point, and that's how I'm feeling. So, yes, I'm happy to support it. Let's move forward.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Blaney. But I still have 3 people on the list. So, and I have Mr. Miao, Ms. Hefner, and Mrs. Wagenthal. So please, you withdraw your, okay. So
Sure.
2 MPs on the list. Mr. Miao, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and sorry, Mr. Chair. I think this amendment it's valid because in the past 10 years when the opposition government is in power, there was a lot of cut to the veterans, and especially closing many offices across the country really limits the service and accessibility for our veterans to inquire and find the service they need. And understanding that there were a location decided before coming to this decision, that kind of took a long time back and forth as well. And that is why it's important for us to really, if we were to study this monument, whether or not it should be continued with the decision that veterans have decided, we should go back from the start to look at where it happened and how we can, at the same time, is to really dig deeper, right? If this is what the opposition member is proposing, then let's do that. And I think ultimately there's nothing to hide. I think our government is very transparent, and there are ways that I think with the things that we have in place that we can really go further into this study and to see what it's impacting our veterans right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miao. And now go to Ms. Hefner.
Thank you, Chair. I agree that this is a good amendment. I think we have to, if we're going to study the monument in Afghanistan, we have to go back to when it was first conceived, and that happened back in 2014. And lots of things have happened with this monument before 2021. And so it's absolutely relevant to study the whole process of how we've gotten to where we are today. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So no more interventions. So we're going to go to a vote on the amendment of Mr. Sarai. So I'd like to ask members of the committee, do I have unanimous consent for the amendment of Mr. Randip Sarai?
No, because we're afraid they're just using it to delay further.
No, I don't have unanimous consent, so je demande donc au greffier de bien
So I ask the clerk to record the votes.
Mr. Badawi,
Yes.
Ms. Hefner,
Favor.
Mr. May,
Yes.
Mr. Miao, Mr. Sarai,
Yes.
Mr. Dodo,
Opposed.
Mr. Richards,
Opposed?
Mr. Tolmie,
Opposed.
Ms. Wagenton,
Against.
Monsieur Desilets,
Opposé.
Ms. Blaney,
In favor.
Yes pour 6, nays contre 5, 5.
6 nays.
Yes, 6 yes.
Excuse me.
6
Yes.
yes.
Okay, so l'amendement de Monsieur Sarai.
The amendment has been adopted. I see 3 hands raised, Mr. Desilets, Mr. May, and then Mr. Miao. And I just want to remind you that we only have 2 minutes left in this meeting. Mr. Desilets, the floor is yours. What I would like to propose it would have been nice to end on a positive note and vote on the motion as is, because since both amendments were settled. So I would ask for us to go to a vote, but I will leave that up to you to decide. Thank you, Mr. Desilets. Mr. Miao and Mr. May. Mr. Mao, go ahead.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I would like to propose another friendly amendment. And if I can share with the committee, at the end of paragraph B, section VII, to remove the following, and without redaction, quote, by replacing it by, quote, using the principles of the Access of Information and Privacy Act. The reasoning for this is important to follow the principle of the Access to Information and Privacy Act and protect personal information. And the long-standing approach taken by successive governments have been to reconcile the exercise by the House of Commons of its privilege with other fundamental constitutional principles such as the rule of law, parliamentary sovereignty, responsible government, and the separation of power. And I hope our opposition members can also agree to move forward with this amendment. Thank you.
OK, merci. Ben, écoutez,
Thank you. Listen, Mr. Miao. Sorry. No, Mr. Miao, we've heard your amendment, but given the time, we are going to have to adjourn. So we will not be able to debate the amendment. So on that note, committee members, does it please the committee to adjourn the meeting?
Listen. The question is, what is the plan?
Asking is, can we have
Yeah.
witnesses come back?
What is the plan is, today we should have at least 5 or 6 witnesses. So the clerk is already in contact with them, and we are so sorry because they were supposed to be here, but we didn't hear anything from them. So I'm afraid that the next meeting on Monday, to call those witnesses to appear in front of us, and if they won't be able to say anything like today, well, as a chair and you, members of the committee, I don't think you'd like to see that. But I think that it was supposed to be the last meeting on that study, civilian life, but I will do whatever you want, and the next Monday we're going to come back. We're going to try to have those witnesses with us. Yeah, after 2 weeks. And I'd like to note if I should try to get them again when we're going to come back on Monday on transition on civilian life. That's the thing. And also, I know that we have a lot of notice of motions, so maybe that we should think about having a committee business to discuss everything and to discuss what we're going to do. And also, we have the report on veteran women's. We have to study, we have to look at that report because it's an important study that we are doing on veterans. So, yeah, Mr. Richards.
Perhaps the best thing would be if the Liberals could indicate how many more amendments they have, because if there's not much more for amendments, we could get this dealt with quite quickly, right? That's probably...
It's, that each member has a privilege to table any amendment, so I can...
No, I'm not arguing they shouldn't be able to, but I'm just wondering if they could indicate how many more they have.
Well, okay, so, yeah, but I will ask one of you... excuse me, je demanderai donc à Monsieur Desilets.
I would ask Mr. Desilets, Ms. Blaney, Mr. Richards, and the parliamentary secretary to write to me during our 2-week break so that we have a meeting that can be productive. So send me your proposals and I will do what the committee members ask of me.
Is that okay with everyone? So, ladies and gentlemen, meeting is adjourned.